The rain lashed against Alara's skin, sharp and merciless, as though the storm itself was hunting her. Every step sank into the mud, stealing seconds she could never get back. Her breath tore from her chest while she forced her way through the forest, branches clawing at her clothes like they knew her fear. And before Alara's fate is revealed, pause for a moment, like this video, subscribe to Lynda's audiobook Haven, and comment the country you're watching from, because this story reaches far beyond this forest, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Chapter 1. The Hunt Through the Forest. The branches tore at Alara's cloak like grasping fingers, but she didn't slow down. Behind her, voices cut through the darkness, rough, eager, hunting. She went this way. Don't let her reach the river. Her lungs burned. The forest floor was treacherous with roots and fallen logs, but fear kept her feet moving. 3 days. She'd managed to stay hidden for 3 days in the village of Thornwick before someone recognized the markings on her hands. Before someone remembered what she was. Healer. Abomination. Witch. The words never mattered. The ending was always the same. Alara vaulted over a stream, her boots hitting mud on the other side. The voices were closer now. At least 4 of them. She recognized Darren's bark of a laugh, the blacksmith's son who'd smiled at her in the market yesterday. Today, he wanted her dead. That was how it always went. She'd saved a child in Millhaven. They'd burned her cottage. She'd healed a farmer's infected wound in Greyvale. They'd chased her to the border with torches. Her gift wasn't a gift at all. It was a brand that marked her for destruction. The forest thickened, pine and shadow swallowing what little moonlight remained. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs as she pushed deeper, ignoring the thorns that caught her skirt, the low branches that whipped her face. She just needed distance. Her foot caught on something solid. She went down hard, palms scraping against stone and moss. Pain shot through her ankle, sharp enough to pull a gasp from her throat. When she tried to stand, her leg buckled. No. Over here. I heard something. The voices were maybe 50 yards back. Close enough to hear her breathing if she didn't move. Alara dragged herself behind a massive oak, biting down on her lip to keep from crying out. Her ankle throbbed. Swelling already. She pressed her glowing palms against the injury, felt the familiar pull of power trying to surge forward. No asterisk. She yanked her hands away, clenching them into fists. Not here. Not now. Every time she used her gift, it left traces. Signatures in the air that hunters could follow. That's how they'd found her in Thornwick. That's how they always found her. Footsteps crunched through the underbrush. Spread out, someone called. Andrew, probably. The village captain who'd looked at her with suspicion from the moment she'd arrived. She's injured. Can't have gone far. Alara pressed herself against the rough bark, making herself as small as possible. Through the gaps in the roots, she could see torchlight dancing between the trees. 4 shapes. Maybe 5. Her heart was so loud she was sure they could hear it. Why bother? Another voice grumbled. Sean, the tanner's apprentice. Just let the forest take her. Easier than. She's cursed, Andrew cut him off. You want that kind of evil lingering in our woods? She dies tonight, or she brings worse down on all of us. Cursed. Evil. Abomination. The words carved themselves into Alara's chest, familiar and deep. She'd heard them so many times they'd started to feel true. Maybe that's what she was. Maybe everyone who'd ever hunted her was right. Maybe she should have let herself die years ago. The torchlight swung closer. Boots stopped 10 feet from her hiding place. Check behind those oaks, Andrew ordered. Alara's breath caught. Her hands trembled against her thighs, power humming beneath her skin like a caged animal. It would be so easy to let it loose. To heal herself and run. To fight. But she'd seen what happened when she fought. The village in the north where she'd been born. The people she'd loved. All gone because she hadn't been able to control it. Asterisk, you destroy everything you touch. Asterisk. The boot steps came closer. Alara closed her eyes and waited for the end. A howl split the night. Not close. Somewhere deeper in the forest, toward the old ruins everyone avoided. But it was enough to freeze every hunter in place. Wolves, someone whispered. Amber, the innkeeper's daughter, her voice thin with fear. We shouldn't be out here. Not this deep. It's just an animal, Andrew snapped, but even his voice had lost some of its certainty. Another howl answered the first. Then another. Not a pack, something else. Something that made the hair on Ilara's neck stand straight. The hunters exchanged glances, torchlight wavering. We come back at dawn, Andrew finally said. With more men. She won't survive the night anyway. Not with her leg and the cold. They retreated, their voices fading into the darkness until only the forest remained. Ilara stayed frozen behind the oak for what felt like hours, listening to the silence. When she finally moved, her ankle screamed in protest. She couldn't stay here. Couldn't go back. She pulled herself upright using the tree trunk, testing her weight. Bad, but not impossible. The howls had come from the east. Toward the ruins. Anywhere but here. Ilara limped into the deeper dark, leaving the hunters and their torches behind, unaware that she was walking straight toward a fate far more dangerous than anything they could have done to her. Chapter 2, The Lifeless Wolf. Ilara's breath came in ragged gasps as she stumbled deeper into the forest, away from the village that had just tried to burn her alive. Again. The silver pendant at her throat, the one thing her mother left her, burned cold against her skin, a constant reminder of what she was. What she tried so hard not to be. Just keep moving. Don't look back. Don't think. But the forest had other plans. She nearly tripped over him. The wolf lay sprawled across the moss-covered ground, massive even in death. His fur was the color of midnight smoke, thick and lustrous despite the blood matting it in places. 3 silver arrows pierced his side, the metal glinting like accusations in the failing light. Silver. The hunter's choice. The killer of her kind. Ilara should have kept walking. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to put distance between herself and whatever tragedy had unfolded here. She'd learned that lesson with Andrew, with Sean, with everyone she'd ever tried to help. Her power didn't save people. It destroyed them. But her feet wouldn't move. She knelt beside the wolf, her fingers hovering over his flank. No breath stirred his chest. No pulse beat beneath that magnificent fur. He was gone, had been for hours, judging by the way the blood had dried around the wounds. I'm sorry, she whispered, though she didn't know why she was apologizing to a corpse. Maybe for all the others she hadn't saved. For Amber, who'd died screaming her name. For Darren, who'd begged her to stop even as the light consumed him. The pendant flared hot against her skin. No. Ilara jerked her hand back, but the damage was done. That familiar heat was building in her chest, crawling up her throat like wildfire. Her power, waking up despite every wall she'd built to contain it. No, no, no. But her hands were already moving, pressing against the wolf's side. The healing gift that had cost her everything surged through her veins, and this time she was too weak, too broken to stop it. Light poured from her palms, not the gentle golden glow of the village healers, but something else entirely. Something ancient and terrible and wrong star. It sank into the wolf's body like water into parched earth, seeking, pulling, demanding star. The silver arrows began to smoke. Ilara tried to pull away, but she couldn't. The power had her now, using her as a conduit for something far beyond simple healing. This was the force that had killed Jason when she tried to cure his fever. The same force that had turned Charles's broken leg into something twisted and monstrous. The wolf's body convulsed. Stop it, stop it, stop. The arrows shot out of his flesh with enough force to embed themselves in nearby trees. The wounds sealed shut as if they'd never been. And then the wolf's eyes snapped open. They weren't the amber or gold of normal wolves. They were silver. Pure, burning silver. Ilara scrambled backward, her power finally releasing her as terror took over. The wolf rose to his feet in one fluid motion, impossibly graceful for something that had been dead moments ago. He was enormous, easily twice the size of any wolf she'd ever seen, his shoulder coming up to her chest even on all fours. Those silver eyes locked onto her with an intelligence that made her blood run cold. This was no ordinary wolf. This was no ordinary mistake. The wolf took a step toward her, and Alara felt it, a pull, like an invisible thread yanking tight between them. The pendant at her throat blazed with sudden heat, and the wolf's eyes flashed in response. "What did I do?" she breathed. The wolf's lips pulled back from teeth that could tear her throat out in an instant. But instead of lunging, he sat watching her with those unnatural eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense she'd ever built. And then he did something that would haunt her for the rest of her days. He bowed his head. Not in submission. In acknowledgement. In recognition. The forest fell silent around them, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Alara's hands shook as she pressed them against her chest, trying to contain the remnants of power still crackling through her veins. She'd thought the worst thing she could do was heal someone and watch them die screaming. She was wrong. This was worse. Because the wolf she'd just awakened, the creature now watching her with ancient, knowing eyes, was still alive. And something told her that would cost her everything. Chapter 3, Awakening the Alpha King. The wolf's chest rose. Alara jerked back, heart hammering, her blooded hands still trembling from the power that had just torn through her. She'd felt it the moment the healing left her body, that familiar, terrible heat that always took more than she intended to give. But this time, it had taken everything. Her vision blurred. The forest tilted sideways. She braced herself against the moss-slick ground, gasping for air that wouldn't come fast enough. And the wolf impossibly breathed. Not the shallow, rattling breath of something clinging to life. This was deep. Steady. The rhythm of a creature that had never known weakness. Alara's pulse spiked with fresh terror. She'd made a mistake. A catastrophic one. The wolf's eyes snapped open. Not amber. Not gold. Silver. Pure, burning silver that cut through the shadows like twin moons, and when they locked onto her, Alara felt the air leave her lungs all over again. Those eyes were old. Ancient. They carried the weight of centuries, of bloodlines long extinct, of power that shouldn't exist anymore. "What did you do?" The voice wasn't a growl. It was a command that reverberated through her bones, through the earth itself. Low, rough, edged with something between disbelief and fury. Alara tried to scramble back, but her body betrayed her. Her limbs felt like water. The healing had drained her too far, pulled her too close to the edge she'd sworn never to approach again. Her voice cracked. "You were dying. So you saved me. It wasn't gratitude. It was an accusation." The wolf rose. No, not a wolf. Between one breath and the next, shadows rippled across fur and bone. The shift was seamless, violent in its grace, and suddenly a man stood where the wolf had been. Alara's breath caught. He was massive. Broad-shouldered and wolf-lean, built like violence barely restrained. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, and his skin bore scars that mapped a history of war. But it was his presence that crushed the air from the clearing, a gravitational weight that made Alara feel small, fragile, seen in ways she'd spent years trying to avoid. Silver eyes pinned her in place. "Who are you?" His voice was quieter now, but no less dangerous. He took a step toward her, and Alara's survival instincts finally kicked in. She tried to run. Her legs buckled. He caught her before she hit the ground, one hand around her wrist, the other steadying her shoulder. His grip was iron, but his touch, gentle. Too gentle for someone radiating that much power. "Easy." The word was soft, almost tender, and that terrified her more than his anger had. "Let me go," Alara whispered. "You can barely stand." "Let me go." His eyes narrowed. For a long moment, he studied her, really looked at her, like he could read every secret carved into her soul. Then, slowly, he released her wrist. Alara staggered back, putting distance between them even as her body screamed in protest. She needed to run. To disappear into the forest before he asked questions she couldn't answer, before he realized what she'd done, what she was. But he wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at his own hands. At the silver scars that had pierced his chest, now sealed over with fresh skin. At the dried blood that painted his torso. At the impossible fact that he was alive when he should have been dead. "Silver," he said quietly. "I was struck with silver arrows. 3 of them, through the heart. His gaze lifted back to her. Nothing survives that. Not even an alpha. Ilara said nothing. But you healed me anyway. He took another step forward, and this time she had nowhere to run. Do you have any idea what you've done? I saved your life, she said, hating how her voice shook. You've bound yourself to me. The words hit like a physical blow. No, Ilara whispered. No, that's not. You feel it, don't you? He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The pull. The thread between us. You healed a wound that should have killed me, using power that shouldn't exist. That kind of magic doesn't come without a price. Ilara's heart was a trapped bird in her chest. Because he was right. She did feel it, a thin, golden thread that hadn't been there before, connecting her to him in ways she didn't understand and couldn't sever. I didn't know, she said desperately. I didn't mean to. It doesn't matter what you meant. His voice was flat now, final. You're bound to me. And I to you. Silence crashed between them. Then, impossibly, he smiled. It was a predator's smile. Beautiful and terrible and full of dark promise. Tell me, little healer, he said softly, do you know who I am? Ilara shook her head. My name is Ronan. He stepped close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his skin, close enough that his voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. And I'm the Alpha King you just brought back from the dead. Chapter 4, The Healer's Sin. The wolf, no, the man, was still unconscious when Ilara fled her cabin at dawn. She couldn't stay. Not with him there, breathing steady and deep, his chest rising and falling in a rhythm that matched the frantic pulse in her throat. Not with the memory of what she'd done still humming beneath her skin like a live wire. She'd sworn never again. And yet she had. The forest swallowed her whole as she ran, branches clawing at her cloak, roots trying to trip her feet. She didn't care. She needed distance. Space. Anything to silence the voice in her head that whispered the same accusation over and over. You did this to yourself. By the time she reached the river's edge, her lungs were burning. Ilara collapsed against a birch tree, pressing her palms flat against the bark as if it could anchor her to something solid, something real. But nothing felt real anymore. Not since she'd touched him. The healing had been instinct, muscle memory from a life she'd tried to bury. But the bond that followed? That was something else entirely. Something she didn't understand and couldn't name. Something that terrified her. Running won't help. Ilara spun, her heart slamming against her ribs. Amber stood at the tree line, arms crossed, her expression caught somewhere between concern and frustration. She was dressed in traveling leathers, a bow slung across her back, her dark hair braided tight against her skull. How did you find me? Ilara's voice came out hoarse. You're not exactly subtle when you're panicking. Amber stepped closer, her boots silent on the moss. Andrew sent word. Said you healed someone last night. Someone who shouldn't have survived. Ilara's stomach dropped. He told you? He's worried. So am I. Amber's gaze sharpened. Who was it, Ilara? Who did you bring back? I don't know. Liar. The word hit like a slap. Ilara flinched, turning away. Known it in the sheer force of him, even unconscious. If you're right, Ilara said slowly, then I've made a terrible mistake. Maybe. Amber's gaze softened. Or maybe you've finally stepped into something you were always meant to face. Before Ilara could respond, a howl split the air. It came from the direction of her cabin, low and resonant, carrying a command that made every hair on Ilara's body stand on end. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was a summons. And her body responded before her mind could catch up, that invisible thread between them pulling tight. He's awake, Amber murmured. Ilara's hands were shaking. I can't go back. You don't have a choice. Amber's expression was grim. Whatever bond you created, it's not going to let you run. Not from him. The howl came again, closer this time. Hunting. Ilara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her mistake settle over her shoulders like a shroud. She'd spent 5 years hiding from what she'd done. 5 years trying to atone for the lives her power had destroyed. And in one night, She chained herself to something infinitely more dangerous. "What do I do?" she whispered. Amber's hand found her shoulder, steady and sure. "You face him. And you make damn sure he knows you're not his to claim." Chapter 5. The Claim of Fate. The fire had died to embers by the time Elara woke, and the wolf was gone. She shot upright, heart hammering. The clearing was empty. No silver-tipped arrows. No blood. No massive black wolf that should have been dead. Only the faint imprint in the dirt where he'd lain. "No," she whispered, scrambling to her feet. Her hands were still stained dark from his blood, or what she'd thought was blood. Now she wasn't sure what had been real. The healing light, the impossible pull between them, the way his eyes had locked onto hers with recognition that felt ancient. A branch snapped behind her. Elara spun, power flaring instinctively at her fingertips before she could suppress it. But the figure that emerged from the tree line wasn't the wolf. It was a man. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Moving with the kind of predatory grace that made her step back before conscious thought caught up. He wore dark traveling clothes, leather braces on his forearms, and his black hair fell just past his collar in waves that caught what little moonlight remained. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Gold. Burning. Familiar. "You," Elara breathed. "Me." His voice was deep, rough at the edges, like he hadn't used it in days. Or years. He stopped at the edge of the clearing, 5 paces away, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Though I believe proper introductions are overdue. I am Ronan." The name hit her like a physical blow. Ronan. She'd heard that name before. In whispers. In warnings. The Alpha King. So they still remember. Something dark flickered across his face. Good. Elara's power coiled tighter in her chest, ready. "You were dead." "I was." He tilted his head, studying her with those impossible eyes. "You brought me back." "I didn't, but she had." She'd poured everything into healing him, broken her own rules, shattered the fragile safety she'd built. And now the most dangerous alpha in living memory stood before her, alive because of her mistake. "Why?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "Why didn't you just leave?" "Leave?" Ronan's laugh was low, humorless. "You healed me with forbidden power. You triggered a bond older than either of our bloodlines. And you think I can simply leave?" The word bond sent ice through her veins. "What bond?" He moved then, closing 2 of those 5 paces in a single fluid motion. Elara's power flared brighter, crackling visibly now, and Ronan stopped. His eyes tracked the light dancing around her fingers with something between hunger and reverence. "The same power that saved me," he said quietly, "is the power that binds you to my throne. I'm not bound to anything. Feel it." His voice dropped, became something between command and plea. "The pull. The recognition. You felt it the moment you touched me." She had. God help her, she had. And she felt it now, a golden thread stretching between them, thrumming with energy that wasn't hers alone. "That's impossible," Elara said, but her voice wavered. "The old laws don't care about possibility." Ronan's gaze never left hers. "A healer who saves an alpha with soul-deep power creates a claim. Fate's claim. It's written in the oldest texts, enforced by magic older than Pax, older than. I don't care how old it is." Elara's power surged, pushing against the invisible thread. "I didn't agree to this. I didn't choose you. Neither did I choose to be murdered." His tone hardened. "Yet here we are." The words landed between them like stones. Elara's anger faltered. "Murdered. Silver through the heart. A coward's weapon." Ronan's hand moved unconsciously to his chest. "I should have stayed dead." "Would have, if you hadn't interfered." "Then why are you here?" Elara demanded. "Why hunt me down if you didn't want this either?" For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, "Because whoever killed me will try again. And when they realize what you are, what you can do." His jaw tightened. "They'll come for you too. I can protect myself." "Can you?" Ronan gestured to the forest around them. "You're running. Hiding. Suppressing power that could level kingdoms. That's not protection, Elara. That's slow suicide. Her name in his mouth felt like possession. You don't know anything about me. I know you're afraid of your own strength. He took another step closer. I know you've been running so long you've forgotten what it means to stand and fight. And I know, his voice softened dangerously, that bond or no bond, the enemies gathering in the shadows won't care about your desire to be left alone. So what? Elara held her ground even as he closed the distance to a single pace. You expect me to just submit? Follow you back to your throne and let you use me? I expect you to survive. Gold eyes bored into hers. Everything else, we negotiate. The thread between them pulled taut, singing with energy. This close, she could feel his heartbeat, strong, steady, alive because of her. Could smell pine and smoke and something wilder underneath. I don't trust you, she whispered. Good. Ronan's mouth curved into something too sharp to be a smile. Trust gets you killed. But this bond. He raised his hand, palm out, not quite touching her. This keeps us both alive long enough to figure out who wants us dead. Elara stared at his outstretched hand. At the choice he was offering that didn't feel like a choice at all. Behind them, deeper in the forest, something howled. Not a wolf. Something older. Hungrier. Ronan's expression darkened. They've already started hunting. So tell me, healer, will you run alone? Or will you let the king you saved stand between you and what's coming? The howl came again, closer. Elara looked at his hand. At the golden thread binding them. At the path behind her that led only to more running, more hiding, more slow erasure of everything she was. She didn't take his hand. But she didn't run either. If I do this, she said quietly, I'm not your property. Not your weapon. Not your... Agreed. The interruption startled her. Ronan lowered his hand but didn't step back. Then what am I to you? His smile turned genuine, though no less dangerous. That, Elara, remains to be seen. The howls multiplied in the darkness. Time was up. And as Ronan shifted back into his wolf form and Elara felt the bond flare bright between them, she realized with cold clarity that she just made the second biggest mistake of her life. The first had been saving him. This one might be trusting him enough to see tomorrow. Chapter 6, Enemies at the Gates. The first attack came at dawn. Elara woke to the sound of snarling, low, vicious, and far too close. She bolted upright in the bed Ronan had given her, heart hammering against her ribs. Outside the window, shadows moved through the mist. She didn't need to see them clearly to know what they were. Wolves. Dozens of them, circling the manor like predators who'd finally cornered their prey. The door to her room burst open. Andrew stood there, already half-shifted, his eyes burning amber in the dim light. Stay here. Lock the door. What's happening? The Blackthorn pack. His voice was a growl. They've come for you. Before she could respond, he was gone, his footsteps thundering down the hallway. Elara's hands trembled as she moved to the window. Below, Ronan's wolves were pouring out of the manor, Sean barking orders, Amber already in full wolf form, her silver coat gleaming as she launched herself at the first Blackthorn who breached the outer wall. And there, in the center of it all, was Ronan. Even from this distance, his presence was undeniable. He moved like violence given form, each strike precise and brutal. When he shifted, the transformation was seamless, a massive black wolf with eyes like molten gold, larger than any creature she'd ever seen. This was the Alpha King. Not the man who'd sat across from her at dinner. Not the voice that had whispered promises of protection. This was the predator beneath the crown. The battle raged below, and Elara pressed her palm against the glass, watching as Darren took down two wolves at once, as Jason guarded the southern flank, as Charles moved through the chaos with deadly efficiency. They were fighting for her. Dying for her. The realization hit like a physical blow. She'd brought this to them. Her presence, her power, it had painted a target on everyone in this house. A crash from downstairs made her jump. Voices shouting. Something breaking. Then silence. Elara's breath caught. That kind of silence meant only one thing: someone had gotten inside. She backed away from the window, scanning the room for anything that could be used as a weapon. Her fingers closed around a letter opener on the writing desk just as her door exploded inward. The wolf was massive, grey and scarred, with eyes that held nothing but hunger. Blackthorn's beater, she realized distantly. She'd seen him once before, years ago, when the packs had gathered for the Winter Council. He'd been cruel even then. "The healer," he said, his voice rough with the edge of his shift. "You're worth more than I thought you'd be." Ilara raised the letter opener, knowing how useless it was. "Stay back." He laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Or what? You'll heal me to death." Ilara's power surged up instinctively, that forbidden warmth flooding through her veins. But this time she didn't push it down. Didn't suppress it. She let it rise. Her hand shot out, and the air between them shimmered with golden light. The beater froze mid-leap, his body seizing as her power wrapped around him like chains. Not healing this time. Something else. Something she didn't know she could do. The wolf's eyes went wide with terror as the light intensified, burning through him, into him, rewriting something fundamental in his blood. What are you doing?" Ilara didn't know. She only knew that she wasn't helpless. Wasn't prey. Wasn't going to die here. The door behind the beater slammed open, and Ronan was there, still in wolf form, his massive jaws closing around the beater's throat before Ilara's power could finish whatever it had started. One sharp twist, and the blackthorn wolf went limp. Ronan shifted back to human form, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't his own. His golden eyes found hers, and for a moment, neither of them moved. "You used your power," he said quietly. "Not a question. An observation." Ilara lowered her trembling hand, the golden light fading. "He was going to kill me. I know." Ronan stepped over the body, closing the distance between them. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to find words. Outside, the sounds of battle had stopped. Either Ronan's pack had won, or... "It's over," Ronan said, reading her fear. "The blackthorns are dead or scattered. You're safe." But she wasn't. She could see it in his eyes, the way he looked at her now. Like she was a puzzle he'd just solved. Like she was exactly what he'd been waiting for. "What did you do to him?" Ronan asked, his voice soft, almost gentle. "Before I arrived." "That wasn't healing." Ilara pulled back from his touch. "I don't know. I've never, it just happened." "Interesting." He smiled, and there was something predatory in it. Something that made her stomach drop. "Your power is evolving, Ilara. Growing stronger. That's not a good thing. Isn't it?" He stepped closer again, and she had nowhere to retreat. "You just defended yourself against a trained warrior. Imagine what you could do with training. With purpose." "I don't want purpose. I want to be left alone." "Too late for that." His hand found hers, fingers threading through her own. "They'll keep coming now. Every pack that's heard the prophecy. Every alpha who wants your power for themselves. Then I'll leave. I'll disappear. They'll find you." His grip tightened, just enough to hold her in place. "The only way you survive this is with me." Ilara met his eyes, searching for the man who'd promised her protection. But all she saw was the Alpha King who'd just slaughtered an entire pack without hesitation. "This is what you wanted," she whispered. "Isn't it? You wanted them to come." Ronan's smile widened. "I wanted you to see what the world will do to you without my protection. Without my strength. You used me as bait. I used you as proof." He released her hand, stepping back. "Now you know. Now you understand." Downstairs, she could hear Andrew shouting orders. Amber calling for healers. The aftermath of war. All because of her. Ronan moved toward the door, then paused. "Clean yourself up. We have much to discuss." His eyes found hers one last time. "And Ilara, don't ever hide your power from me again. I need to know exactly what you're capable of." Then he was gone, leaving her alone with a corpse and the terrible certainty that she'd just proven herself valuable to the most dangerous man alive. Outside, the sun was rising over a battlefield. And Ilara finally understood, the enemies at the gates were nothing compared to the one who'd already claimed her. Chapter 7. The prophecy revealed. The ancient library beneath Ronan's stronghold smelled of dust and decay. Ilara descended the spiral stone staircase, her fingers trailing along the cold wall, each step echoing in the darkness. She hadn't been invited. She hadn't asked permission. She was done waiting for truth to be handed to her in careful pieces. Behind her, she heard footsteps, 2 sets. Andrew and Sean, the king's most loyal guards, had been shadowing her since dawn. They thought she didn't notice. She noticed everything now. "You shouldn't be down here," Andrew called, his voice tight with warning. The king ordered. "The king doesn't control where I walk," Ilara said without turning. Her voice carried more steel than she'd ever allowed before. "Not yet." The library opened before her like a cathedral of secrets. Towering shelves disappeared into shadow. Manuscripts spilled across tables, some so old the parchment had turned to skin. In the center of the room, beneath a single shaft of moonlight from a window high above, stood a pedestal. On it lay a book bound in black leather, clasped with silver that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Ilara's power stirred beneath her skin, recognizing something in that book. Something that had been calling to her since the moment she'd healed Ronan. "Don't touch it." Amber's voice cut through the silence. The female warrior emerged from between the shelves, her amber eyes glowing in the dim light. "You don't know what that is." "Then tell me," Ilara demanded, moving closer to the pedestal. "Tell me what everyone's been hiding." Amber's jaw tightened. For a moment, Ilara thought she might refuse. Then the warrior's shoulders sagged, just slightly. "It's the seer's record. Every prophecy spoken by the bloodline oracles for the last 1,000 years. She paused. "Including the one about you." Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Show me." "Ilara. Show me." Amber exchanged a glance with Andrew and Sean, then slowly approached the pedestal. She unclasped the book with careful reverence, flipping through pages that whispered like dying leaves. Finally, she stopped. "Here." Amber turned the book toward Ilara. "The prophecy of the bonded healer." The words were written in blood-red ink, still vivid despite centuries of age. "When silver fails and the king falls still. When death's cold hand grips winter's throne. A healer cursed shall bend her will. And wake the wolf who walks alone. Her power born of ancient flame. Shall bind the king in chains unseen. But she who gives herself to claim. Shall crown the strongest or bring him to his knees. Asterisk. 2 paths before her, light and dark. Submit, and shield his reign eternal. Refuse, and let her power spark. The fall of all things built infernal." Ilara read the words 3 times, each pass making her blood run colder. "This is why he claimed me. Not because of fate. Because of this." "The bond is fate," Andrew insisted, stepping forward. "You saved him." "The prophecy." "The prophecy says I'll either submit to him or destroy him." Ilara's laugh came out bitter and sharp. "How convenient. Either I become his weapon, or I become his enemy." "You don't understand what you're reading," Sean said, his young face earnest. "The king would never." "Wouldn't he?" Ilara spun to face them all. "Every decision he's made since I healed him has been about control. Keeping me here. Keeping me close. Making me trust him." Her voice cracked. "Making me care." Footsteps on the stairs. Heavier. Purposeful. Ronan appeared in the doorway, flanked by Darren and Jason, 2 of his battle commanders. His eyes found Ilara first, then the open book, then Amber's guilty expression. "Leave us," he commanded. No one moved. "I said leave." The power in his voice vibrated through the stone itself. Andrew, Sean, and Amber filed out, though Amber shot Ilara one last look, something between warning and apology. Darren and Jason remained at the door, silent sentinels. Ronan crossed the room with predatory grace. "You weren't supposed to find that." Clearly. Ilara stood her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to run. "Were you ever going to tell me the truth?" "I was protecting you." "From what? Knowledge? Choice?" She slammed her hand on the pedestal. "You've known from the beginning. That's why you marked me. That's why you won't let me leave." Ronan's eyes flashed silver. I marked you because the bond chose us both. The prophecy simply confirmed what I already felt. The prophecy says I'm either your shield or your destruction. Ilara's voice trembled with rage and something deeper, betrayal. Tell me, Ronan. Which one did you want me to be? He moved closer, and she hated how her body still responded to his presence. Hated the pull between them that felt like gravity. I wanted you safe, he said quietly. I wanted you alive. Everything else. Was you deciding my fate without asking? Ilara stepped back from the pedestal, from him, from all of it. Her power surged beneath her skin, bright and burning. She could feel it now, the ancient flame the prophecy spoke of, the thing she'd spent years suppressing. It wasn't destruction. It was freedom. The prophecy says I have two paths, Ilara said, her voice steady now. But you're wrong about one thing. It doesn't say I have to choose you to survive. She met his eyes. It says you need me to survive. And that, Ronan, that changes everything. She walked past him, past Darren and Jason, past the choices others had tried to make for her. Behind her, she heard Ronan speak one last time. Where are you going? Ilara didn't look back. To find out what happens when a healer stops kneeling. The words hung in the darkness long after she was gone. Chapter 8. Love or Leash. The War Council chamber felt smaller than it should have been, despite its vaulted ceiling and stone pillars thick enough to hide a man. Ilara stood near the arched window, watching dawn bleed across the mountains, while behind her the Alpha King's inner circle gathered like wolves circling prey. She'd been summoned. Not asked. Summoned. Ronan sat at the head of the table, his presence filling the room even in silence. To his right sat Andrew, his beater, stone-faced and watchful. Across from him lounged Sean, the pack's strategist, fingers drumming an impatient rhythm against scarred wood. Amber stood near the door, the only other woman present, her amber eyes, aptly named, fixed on Ilara with something between pity and warning. The southern packs have allied, Sean said, pushing a map toward Ronan. Darren's scouts confirmed it this morning. They're calling it a holy purge. They want the healer delivered to them within the week, or they march on our borders. Ilara's fingers tightened on the windowsill. She'd known this was coming. Had felt it building like pressure before a storm. Let them march, Ronan said quietly. Too quietly. They'll bleed on our walls like every other fool who's tried. This isn't about walls, Andrew cut in, his voice low and steady. It's about her. They're not backing down, Ronan. Not this time. They believe she's the corruption the prophecy warned against. Corruption. The word landed like a blade between her ribs. They're wrong, Ronan said, and the certainty in his voice should have warmed her. Instead, it chilled her to the bone. Ilara's power doesn't corrupt. It conquers. That's what they fear. She turned from the window, finally meeting his gaze across the room. And what do you fear, Ronan? The question hung in the sudden silence. Sean stopped drumming. Andrew's jaw tightened. Even Amber shifted uncomfortably by the door. Ronan rose slowly, the scrape of his chair against stone the only sound. When he moved toward her, the others seemed to fade, though none of them left. I fear nothing, he said. Least of all you. Liar. The word came out softer than she'd intended, but no less sharp. His eyes darkened. Not with anger, with something more dangerous. Recognition, maybe. Or hunger. The bond between us, Ronan continued, as if she hadn't spoken, it's meant to unite us. To make us unstoppable. But it only works if you stop fighting what you are. What you want me to be, Ilara corrected. They're the same thing. Are they? Andrew cleared his throat, a deliberate intrusion. Perhaps we should discuss the Southern Pack's terms. No. Ronan didn't look away from Ilara. There are no terms. She stays. Under my protection. Protection. Such a gentle word for a cage. Ilara stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, the tension in his jaw. What happens when your protection becomes my prison? For a moment, just a heartbeat, something flickered across his face. Doubt. Guilt. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by the implacable certainty that made him king. That will never happen, he said. You can't promise that. Her voice cracked, just slightly. You can't promise me freedom and then demand I submit to fate, to prophecy, to *U*. Those things can't coexist, Ronan. Sean spoke up from the table, his tone careful. The girl has a point. If the bond is as strong as you claim, forcing her hand might. Might what? Ronan's voice cut like winter wind. Might make her resent me. She already does. Might make her run. She's tried. The bond won't let her get far. He turned back to Alara, and the raw honesty in his next words struck harder than any command. Didn't choose this either. But I'm not fool enough to fight it. Then you're not brave enough to question it. The room went silent again, tension thick enough to choke on. It was Amber who finally spoke, her voice cutting through the standoff. The Southern Packs want an answer by nightfall tomorrow. What do we tell them? Ronan's gaze never left Alara. We tell them she's mine. That any hand raised against her is raised against me. And that I will burn their territories to ash before I let them touch her. The declaration should have been romantic. Protective. Instead, it felt like ownership wrapped in velvet. Alara's power stirred beneath her skin, responding to her rising emotion, fear and fury tangled together. The air around her warmed, just slightly. Just enough that everyone in the room felt it. And if I choose to go, she asked quietly. If I decide your protection isn't worth the price? The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples of shock spreading across every face in the room. Except Ronan's. He closed the final distance between them, close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. When he spoke, his voice was low, meant only for her, though everyone heard it anyway. Then I'll let you walk out that door. He gestured toward the exit where Amber stood. And I'll watch every enemy we've made descend on you within the hour. Because without me, Alara, you're just powerful prey. With me, you're a queen. Or a weapon, she whispered. The difference, he said, leaning closer, is who wields you. The words hung between them, brutal in their honesty, terrifying in their implication. Because he was right, and they both knew it. Her power made her a target. His claim made her untouchable. But untouchable wasn't the same as free. Dismissed, Ronan said suddenly, his eyes still locked on hers. All of you. Now. The others filed out quickly, Andrew with a concerned backward glance, Sean with obvious relief, Amber with that same pitying look. When the door closed behind them, the silence felt different. Heavier. More honest. I won't cage you, Ronan said quietly. But I won't apologize for keeping you alive either. Alara searched his face, looking for the lie. Found only conviction. Is that love? She asked. Or just another leash with a prettier name? He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. Ask me again, he said, when you've decided which one you'll accept. Then he left her standing there, alone in the council chamber, with the weight of that impossible choice settling on her shoulders like a crown made of thorns. Chapter 9. She refuses to kneel. The throne room was carved from ancient stone, lit by torches that cast dancing shadows across walls marked with centuries of pack history. Alara stood at its center, surrounded by Ronan's inner circle Andrew, his second-in-command, Sean, the strategist, Amber, the pack healer who'd watched her with suspicion from the start, Darren and Jason, enforcers whose loyalty to Ronan was absolute, and Charles, the eldest council member whose eyes held secrets darker than the prophecy itself. Ronan sat on his throne, every inch the Alpha King. But Alara no longer saw protection in his gaze. She saw possession. The ritual begins at moonrise, Ronan announced, his voice carrying the weight of command. Alara will be bound to the bloodline, her power channeled through the throne. It's the only way to protect her and our people from what's coming. Protect me. Alara's voice cut through the room like silver through flesh. Or control me. Andrew shifted uncomfortably. Amber's expression flickered with something that might have been pity. But no one spoke against their king. You don't understand the forces gathering against us, Ronan said, rising from his throne. The rival packs, The ancient enemies, they'll tear you apart to claim your power. This bond will shield you. By taking everything I am and locking it inside your throne. Ilara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. I've read the prophecy, Ronan. All of it. Not the version you showed me, the complete text that Charles tried to hide. The eldest council member went rigid. The bond doesn't protect the healer, Ilara continued, her words landing like blows. It consumes her. Every Alpha King who's performed this ritual has drained their bound healer dry, using their power until nothing remained but ash and memory. Don't lie to me. Power flared around Ilara, making the torches gutter and flames turn silver white. Not now. Not after everything. Sean took a step back, his strategic mind clearly calculating new variables. Darren and Jason moved closer to Ronan, hands on their weapons, but their king held up a hand to stop them. I love you, Ronan said, and the raw honesty in his voice almost broke her. Everything I've done has been to keep you safe. You love what I can give you, Ilara whispered. Power. Legitimacy. A way to crush your enemies and cement your rule. But you don't love me. Because if you did, you would have given me a choice. Amber spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but firm. She's right, my king. The old texts are clear. The ritual was necessary for survival. Ronan's voice thundered through the chamber. Every generation has made sacrifices for the greater good. You think I want this? You think I don't know what it's see? Then stop, Ilara pleaded. Choose me over the crown. Choose us over destiny. The silence that followed was suffocating. In Ronan's eyes, Ilara saw the war between the man who'd held her through nightmares and the king who'd been raised to believe power was worth any price. I can't, he finally said. The Pax need. You mean you won't? Ilara felt something break inside her, not her spirit, but the last chain of fear that had kept her small, hidden, afraid of her own strength. She'd spent years believing her power only destroyed. But she'd been wrong. Her power didn't destroy, it transformed. It liberated. It chose star. I refuse, she said simply. You don't have a choice. Ronan descended from his throne, closing the distance between them. The bond is already forming. You felt it the moment you healed me. We're connected now, Ilara. Fighting it will only. Then I'll break it. She raised her hands, and silver light exploded from her palms. Not the gentle healing glow she'd always used, but something raw and primal, the full force of her power unleashed without fear or restraint. The throne room shook. Ancient stones cracked. And the invisible threads binding her to Ronan began to snap, one by one. Stop! Charles shouted. If you sever the bond this way, it'll kill you both. Maybe, Ilara gasped, agony lancing through her as the connection tore. But I'd rather die free than live as someone's weapon. Ronan staggered, clutching his chest. Andrew rushed to support him, while Amber watched Ilara with something like awe. Please, Ronan breathed, and for the first time since she'd known him, the Alpha King looked vulnerable. Don't leave me. You left me first, Ilara said, tears streaming down her face. The moment you decided your throne mattered more than my freedom. With a final surge of power, the bond shattered completely. Ilara collapsed to her knees, but she was smiling. Because for the first time in her life, she was entirely, completely, wholly her own. The throne room doors burst open. Outside, she could hear the chaos of rival packs gathering, ancient enemies sensing weakness, the world closing in on all sides. But Ilara stood anyway. She walked past Ronan, past his council, past the throne that would have consumed her. Where will you go? Sean asked quietly. Ilara looked back one last time at the Alpha King who'd claimed to love her but had really only wanted to own her. Anywhere I choose, she said. And she walked into the uncertain night, finally free. Epilogue. 6 months later, rumors spread through the territories of a rogue healer who moved like a shadow through the forests. She saved the dying without asking permission or payment. She broke curses that even the oldest pack healers couldn't touch. And when enemy forces tried to claim her, they found not a fragile woman running scared, but a power that bent to no one's will but her own. Ronan heard every story. Some said he still searched for her, that the Alpha King had abandoned his throne to find the one who got away. Others whispered he'd learned his lesson, that true strength wasn't about control, but about letting go. Ilara didn't know which version was true. She was too busy writing her own story. In a clearing where moonlight pooled like liquid silver, she knelt beside a wounded fox kit, her hands already glowing with healing warmth. Not because fate demanded it. Not because anyone commanded it. But because she chose it. And that made all the difference. If you loved Ilara's journey from captive to free, from afraid to awakened, please subscribe and like Lynda's audiobook Haven for more stories of women who refuse to kneel. Comment below with the country you're watching from. We love connecting with listeners around the world. More transformative tales of power, choice, and courage await you. Subscribe now and never miss a story that reminds you, your freedom is worth fighting for. Some said he still searched for her, that the Alpha King had abandoned his throne to find the one who got away. Others whispered he'd learned his lesson, that true strength wasn't about control, but about letting go. Ilara didn't know which version was true. She was too busy writing her own story. In a clearing where moonlight pooled like liquid silver, she knelt beside a wounded fox kit, her hands already glowing with healing warmth. Not because fate demanded it. Not because anyone commanded it. But because she chose it. And that made all the difference. If you loved Ilara's journey from captive to free, from afraid to awakened, please subscribe and like Lynda's audiobook Haven for more stories of women who refuse to kneel. Comment below with the country you're watching from. We love connecting with listeners around the world. More transformative tales of power, choice, and courage await you. Subscribe now and never miss a story that reminds you, your freedom is worth fighting for.